I am 26 years old. I have a good job, a small apartment I love, and a life I built for myself. Every Sunday, I drive 40 minutes to my parents' house for dinner. It has been our routine for as long as I can remember. It was a pillar of stability in my life. Or so I thought. My father, David, is a quiet man. He worked hard his entire life as an engineer, providing a comfortable home and a good life for us. My mother, Amelia, was the opposite. She was loud, social, and always the center of every room she entered. She never worked outside the home. Her focus was always on family, appearances, and maintaining our social standing. The dinner table was a perfect stage for their dynamic. My dad would eat quietly, tired from his week. My mom would fill the silence, talking about neighbors, friends, and family gossip. I usually sat between them, a willing audience, a bridge between his silence and her chatter. This Sunday started no differently. My mom had made a roast chicken. The smell filled the familiar kitchen. My dad carved the bird with practiced hands, placing a piece on my plate, then my mom's, then his own. The price of everything is just getting ridiculous, my mom began, a familiar opening. I was at the store today, and you would not believe what they are charging for produce. My dad just nodded and took a bite of potatoes. He was used to these monologues. I do not know how people manage, she continued, her fork tapping her plate for emphasis. We are lucky David has a good pension coming, but we still have to be so careful. We will have to put off fixing the front porch again, I suppose. She looked at my dad, waiting for a response. He gave none. He just kept eating. I saw a flash of irritation cross her face. This was part of their weekly dance. She would complain about money, and he would absorb it, his silence a wall she could never seem to break. I knew he was not stingy. He was just careful. He was a planner. My mom was a spender. Feeling the tension rise, I tried to steer the conversation. The chicken is delicious, Mom. She gave me a weak smile. Thank you, dear. Her eyes flicked back to my dad, her target. The smile vanished. She put her fork down and looked at me, her expression turning theatrical and wounded. She was recruiting me to her side. It is hard to save, Chloe. It is very hard to keep this house afloat when your father has been sending money to a secret family. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. A secret family. The phrase was so dramatic, so cliché, it felt like it belonged in a soap opera, not my parents' quiet dining room. My stomach turned to ice. I stopped chewing. I looked at my dad, my heart pounding, waiting for him to laugh or to get angry or to deny it. I expected him to slam his hand on the table and tell her she had gone too far. He did none of those things. He very slowly, very deliberately placed his knife and fork down on his plate. He did not look at me. He did not look at the food. He looked directly at my mother, and his face was completely calm. It was a terrifying calm. It was the calm of a man who had reached a final limit. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My mom's triumphant, wounded expression began to falter under his steady gaze. She looked nervous. Then my dad spoke. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence with the sharpness of glass. Amelia, he said, his voice level and cold. It was your family. The silence that followed was different. It was not just quiet. It was a vacuum. It sucked all the air out of the room. My mom's face, which had been flushed with righteous drama, went completely pale. It was the color of chalk. My mind was a scramble of noise, trying to make sense of his words. Her family? My grandparents? My aunts and uncles? It made no sense. But the look on my mother's face told me it was true. Whatever it was true. And it was a secret she never, ever wanted me to know. The Sunday dinner, my pillar of stability, had just crumbled into dust. My mother was the first to break the horrible silence. Her voice was a choked whisper. That is not true, she said, her eyes darting between me and my father. He is lying. He is twisting things to make me look bad. My father just shook his head slowly, a deep and weary sadness in his eyes. He pushed his chair back from the table. The sound of the wood scraping against the floor was unnervingly loud. "I am done with this," he said, not to her, but to the room. "I am done with these games." He stood up and walked out of the dining room without another word. I heard his heavy footsteps on the stairs, then the soft click of his study door closing. He was gone. He had left me alone with her. He had left me in the wreckage. I turned to my mom. Her face was a mess of emotions, fear, anger, and a desperate attempt to regain control. "Chloe, do not listen to him," she pleaded, her voice gaining a little of its strength back. "You know how he can be. He is just trying to hurt me." I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching this scene from far away. "Mom," I said, and my own voice sounded strange to my ears. What did he mean? What is he talking about? "It is nothing," she said, waving her hand dismissively, but her hand was trembling. "It is a misunderstanding. My sister Brenda, you know she has had health problems. We have helped her out a little bit, a few $100s here and there. Your father agreed to it. He is just being cruel, bringing it up like this, making it sound like some dark secret. A little help. A few $100s. It sounded plausible. My Aunt Brenda had always been described as frail. But my dad's words had not been about a little help. He had used her own accusation, a secret family. The words were a direct echo, a turning of the blade back on her. "He said your family," I pressed, "not just Aunt Brenda. He made it sound like more than that." I needed to understand. The foundation of my world had a crack in it, and I had to know how deep it went. "He is exaggerating," she insisted, her voice rising. "He is trying to punish me because I dared to question him. He has always resented my family. He thinks they are not good enough." She was starting to get teary, her go-to tactic. The tears had always worked on me before. They made me feel guilty, made me want to comfort her and make it better. But this time, it felt different. It felt like a performance. I saw the gears turning. She was not just sad. She was cornered. That was not grief on her face. It was panic. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Something was very, very wrong. "I think I need to talk to Dad," I said, standing up. Her eyes widened in alarm. "No, Chloe, do not. Let him cool off. This is between us. We can sort it out." Her desperation to keep me from talking to him was the final confirmation I needed. She was not protecting him. She was protecting her secret. "I will be right back," I said, my voice more firm than I intended. I left her sitting at the table, a lonely figure surrounded by the cooling remnants of our last normal dinner. I walked up the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. The door to his study was closed. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the knob. I was afraid of what I would find on the other side. Not a monster, but a truth that might be worse. I took a breath and knocked softly. "Dad?" I called out. There was a pause, then his tired voice. "Come in." I opened the door. The room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside the window. He was sitting in his large leather armchair, not reading, not working, just staring into the darkness. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. Defeated. I did not turn on the light. I walked over and sat on the ottoman in front of him. "Dad?" I started, my voice soft. "I'm so sorry. I did not mean to cause a fight." He sighed, a long, ragged sound. "You did not cause this, Chloe. This has been coming for a very long time." "Mom said you were helping Aunt Brenda," I said, testing the waters. "She said it was just a little bit of money for her health." He was silent for a long time. I could barely see his face in the gloom. "Is that what she told you?" he finally asked. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Yes," I said. "She said you agreed to it." He let out a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. I agreed to help Brenda with a prescription copay once. That was 12 years ago. That was the agreement. 12 years ago, a single copay. That was not a little help. That was a different story entirely. What are you talking about? I asked. What has been going on? He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and rubbed his face with his hands. Chloe, I do not want to put you in the middle of this. This is between your mother and me. It is too late for that, I said, my voice stronger now. The fear was being replaced by a cold, rising anger. Mom put me in the middle of it when she accused you of having a secret family. You put me in the middle of it when you said it was hers. You cannot just light a fire and walk away, leaving me to guess what is burning. He looked up, and in the dim light, I could see the glistening of unshed tears in his eyes. It shocked me. I had seen my father cry only once in my life, at his own mother's funeral. You are right, he said, his voice thick. You deserve to know, but I do not even know where to start. It is so much. It is so long. Start with what you said, I urged. Her family. Was it more than Aunt Brenda? He nodded slowly. It was Brenda. It was her brother, Mark. It was their parents when they were alive. It was cousins I have never even met. The scope of it was breathtaking. It was not just one person. It was a whole network. How? I whispered. How is that possible? Ask your mother, he said, leaning back again, retreating into the chair. Ask her about the business loan you gave your Uncle Mark in 2015. Ask her where that money really went. He gave me a specific thread. A date. A person. An event. It was not just a vague accusation anymore. It was a clue. It was a starting point for me to find the truth myself. He was not going to tell me the whole story. He was going to let me uncover it. Maybe he thought it was the only way I would truly believe it. Okay, I said, standing up. I will. I left him in the darkness and went back downstairs. My mother was no longer in the dining room. I found her in the kitchen, washing dishes with a frantic energy, her back to me. She was pretending everything was normal. I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed. Mom. She jumped, startled. She turned around, wiping her wet hands on a towel. Oh, Chloe, I thought you had gone home. I was talking to Dad, I said, my voice even. A flicker of fear crossed her face again. Is he all right? He gets so worked up. He told me to ask you something, I said, walking further into the kitchen. I stopped a few feet from her. He told me to ask you about a business loan for Uncle Mark in 2015. Her composure shattered. She dropped the towel and stared at me, her mouth slightly open. She was trying to formulate a lie. I could see it in her eyes. The wheels were spinning, searching for a plausible story. Oh, that, she finally said, forcing a casual laugh. That was so long ago. Mark wanted to start a little landscaping business. He just needed a small loan to get started. Your father and I were happy to help him. A small loan? I asked. How small? Oh, I do not remember exactly, she said, turning away to put some dishes in the rack. A few $1,000s, maybe. It was nothing. He was very grateful. And the business? I asked. Is it doing well? Yes, very well, she said quickly. He is doing great. In fact, he paid the loan back within a year. It was a wonderful investment in family. He paid it back. She said it so easily. But my father's tone had suggested something very different. He had not said, ask her about the successful loan you gave Mark. He had said, ask her where that money really went. The implication was clear. It had not gone to a business, and it had not been paid back. I looked at my mother, her back still to me as she scrubbed a pot that was already clean. She was lying. It was as clear as the water running from the faucet. She was building a wall of lies, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that my job was now to tear it down. Brick by brick. The drive home was a blur. My mind was a whirlwind of conversations, Accusations and lies. My mother's desperate justifications played on a loop, each one sounding more hollow than the last. My father's weary, broken voice echoed in my ears. Ask her where that money really went. It was a mission. When I got back to my apartment, I did not turn on the television or listen to music. The silence was a canvas for my thoughts. For my entire life, my mother had been the narrator of our family's story. She was the loving wife, the devoted mother. My father was the stoic provider, a bit distant, a bit emotionally closed off. It was a narrative I had never questioned. Now, I saw it for what it was. A story. And she was an unreliable narrator. I needed proof. My feelings, my suspicions, they were not enough. If I was going to confront this, I needed facts. Cold, hard, undeniable facts. Financial records. That was where the truth would be. Money does not lie. I knew my parents kept old records in the basement. Boxes and boxes of them. Tax returns, receipts, bank statements, going back decades. My dad was a meticulous record keeper. It was part of his engineering mindset. Everything had a place. Everything was documented. It was a trait my mom often teased him about. Now, I realized it might be our only salvation. I could not wait until next Sunday. I had to go back. I called my mom the next morning. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to sound normal. "I think I left my jacket at your place. Can I swing by this afternoon to pick it up?" "Of course, dear," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. She was already back to pretending. "I will be here. I am just doing some gardening." "Is Dad around?" I asked, as casually as I could. "No, he went out early," she said. "Said he had some errands to run." Perfect. That afternoon, I drove back to my childhood home. The house looked exactly the same, but it felt different. It felt like a stage, and I was now aware of all the props and hidden mechanisms. My mom met me at the door with a hug. A little too tight. A little too long. "I found your jacket. It was on the chair in the living room," she said, smiling. "Thanks, Mom," I said. "Hey, while I am here, I need to look for something in the basement. Some old college textbooks. I think they are in a box down there." It was a weak excuse, but it was the best I could come up with. "Oh, all right," she said, unfazed. "Let me know if you need help. It is a mess down there." "No, I will be fine," I said. "I know where they probably are." I went down the creaky wooden stairs to the basement. It smelled of damp concrete and dust. Along the far wall were a dozen tall metal filing cabinets, my dad's archive, and next to them a stack of cardboard boxes, all neatly labeled by year. 2010, 2011, 2012. This was it. My heart was pounding as I started looking for the box labeled 2015. It was near the bottom of the stack. I had to move several heavy boxes to get to it. Finally, I pulled it out and carried it to the workbench under the single, bare light bulb. I sliced the tape with my car key and opened the flaps. Inside were folders. Taxes 2015, mortgage statements 2015, household receipts 2015. And there it was, a thick folder labeled Bank Statements 2015. I sat on a dusty stool and pulled out the folder. I opened it and started going through the statements, month by month. January, February, March. I was looking for large, unusual transactions. My mom had said a few $1,000s. My dad had implied it was much more. The first few months were normal. Mortgage payment, utility bills, grocery store charges. Then I got to April. I scanned the list of debits. And then I saw it. A wire transfer. The description was vague. Personal transfer. The amount was $10,000. My breath caught in my throat. 10,000. That was not a small loan. I kept going. May. Another transfer. This time for $5,000. June. Another 10,000. I flipped through the pages, my hands starting to shake. July. August. September. Every month a new transfer. The amounts varied, but they were all in the thousands. I quickly added them up in my head. By the end of the year, the total was over $50,000. $50,000. In less than a year. My mom had lied. It was not a small loan. It was a fortune. And she had said he paid it back. There were no corresponding deposits. There was no $50,000 coming back into the account. It was just gone. The statements listed the destination account number, but not the name of the account holder. I had no way of knowing for sure if it went to Uncle Mark. But my father's words, "Ask her where that money really went," echoed in my mind. He knew. I needed more than just a suspicion. I needed to connect that account number to a person. And I needed to know if this was a one-time thing in 2015 or if it was a pattern. My next step was to talk to someone who was outside the immediate blast zone. Someone who knew the family but was on my dad's side. My Aunt Carol. My dad's older sister. She was a no-nonsense nurse, practical and down-to-earth. She had always been kind to me, but I sensed she was never fully charmed by my mother. I packed up the 2015 box, making sure it looked untouched. Then, on a hunch, I grabbed the box for 2016 as well. I took them both out to my car, telling my mom I had found my old textbooks and a bunch of other junk I needed to sort through. She just smiled and waved me off, happy to have me out of the house. That evening, I called Aunt Carol. "Hi, Aunt Carol," I said. "Do you have a minute to chat?" "For you, sweetie?" "Always," she said. Her voice was warm and comforting. I decided to start indirectly. I did not want to come at her with the whole sordid story at once. I needed to test the waters. "I was just talking to Mom the other day," I began, "and we were talking about Uncle Mark. Mom said his landscaping business is going really well." Aunt Carol let out a loud laugh. "What landscaping business? Chloe, your Uncle Mark has never worked a steady day in his life. The only thing he landscapes is his couch. Your mother is a dreamer." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" I asked, playing dumb. She said they loaned him money to start it up a few years ago. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Carol spoke again, her voice was more serious. "Chloe, what is this about? Did Amelia say something to you?" I decided to trust her. I had to trust someone. "Something happened, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "At dinner on Sunday, Mom accused Dad of having a secret family, and he said it was her family." I heard a long, heavy sigh. "Oh dear," she said. "So it is finally coming out. I wondered how long David could keep it all under wraps." "You knew?" I asked, shocked. "You knew about this?" "I did not know the details," she said carefully. "Your father is a very private man, but I knew Amelia's family was a constant drain. Over the years, David has mentioned things, vague things. A new car for Mark, a down payment for Brenda's condo. It was never a direct conversation. Just hints of it. I tried to talk to him once, years ago. I told him it was not right. He just shut me down. He said it was his family, his money, and his problem to manage. A down payment for a condo. A new car. This was so much bigger than I had imagined. Mom told me it was a small loan for Mark's business and he paid it back," I said, my voice hollow. "Chloe, listen to me," Carol said, her nurse voice kicking in, calm and authoritative. "Your Uncle Mark has never had two nickels to rub together. If he got a loan, he did not pay it back. And your Aunt Brenda, she lives in a beautiful townhouse I know she could not afford on a part-time librarian's salary. Your mother, she has a very generous heart when it is with your father's money." The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture that was uglier than I could have imagined. My mother was not just helping. She was funding their lives, and she was lying to everyone about it. "I found some bank statements from 2015, I told Carol. $50,000 in transfers to an account I do not recognize." "That was the year they had that big kitchen remodel, wasn't it?" Carol asked. "Yes," I said, confused. What does that have to do with it? I remember David telling me the contractor's bill was much higher than he expected, she said thoughtfully. He complained about it, said the costs just kept going up and up. A new, terrible thought began to form in my mind. A dark and awful suspicion. Aunt Carol, I said slowly, thank you. You have given me a lot to think about. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, the bank statement spread out on my coffee table. A business loan, a kitchen remodel. 2 different stories to explain where a huge amount of money had gone. Both of them were lies. I had to talk to my dad again. I had to show him what I had found. I had to know the truth about that kitchen. The next day, I called my dad. Dad, can we meet? Not at the house. He agreed, his voice tired. We met at a coffee shop, a neutral ground. I brought the folder with the bank statements. We sat at a small table in the corner. I did not waste any time. I pushed the folder across the table to him. This is from 2015, I said. I found it in the basement. He opened it and looked at the highlighted transfers. He did not look surprised. He just looked sad. $50,000, Dad, I said. Mom told me it was a loan for Uncle Mark's business. Aunt Carol told me he has never had a business. What was this money for? He stared at the papers for a long time. Finally, he looked up at me. It was for the new kitchen, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I was confused. But we got a new kitchen. I was here. I saw them install it. Yes, he said. We did. Your mother was in charge of the project. She handled the payments to the contractor. She would tell me she needed a check for the cabinets or the countertops or the plumber. She showed me invoices, and I wrote the checks. Or I transferred the money to her personal account, which is what you are seeing there. She said it was easier to pay them from one place. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. And? I prompted. And about a month after the project was finished, he continued, his voice cracking, I got a call. It was from the contractor. He was a nice man. He sounded embarrassed. He said he hated to bother me, but he had not been paid. Not a dime. He said he had been calling your mother for weeks and she kept making excuses. I could not breathe. What? I had already paid her over $60,000 for the kitchen, he said, his eyes empty. The money was just gone. The invoices she showed me? She had faked them. She made them on her computer. I stared at him, speechless. This was not just about giving money to her family. This was calculated. It was deceitful. It was a theft. What did you do? I whispered. I paid him, he said simply. I went to the bank. I took out a loan, and I paid the contractor the $58,000 he was owed. I could not let the man be ruined because of her. And Mom? I asked, my voice tight with fury. What did she say? Where did the money go? She cried, he said, looking away. She said Mark was in trouble. He had gambling debts. He was going to be hurt. She said she had to help him. She swore it would never happen again. She begged me not to leave her. You were in high school. I just wanted to keep our family together. I covered it up. I told myself it was a one-time terrible mistake. He had taken out a loan to pay for her deception. He had shouldered the debt, the secret, and the betrayal. All to protect me. All to keep up the appearance of a happy family. The quiet, stoic father I had sometimes resented for being distant was not distant at all. He was carrying a burden so heavy it had been crushing him for years. And my mother, the warm, loving center of our family, had put it on his back and then lied about its weight. The anger I felt was pure and hot. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a little help for family. This was a long, elaborate con, and my dad was the victim. My anger was no longer just about finding the truth. It was about getting justice. My resolve hardened from a simple decision into a sharp-pointed weapon. The investigation was no longer about satisfying my own curiosity. It was a mission. My dad had tried to handle this quietly for years, and all it had done was enable my mom and her family to bleed him dry. Quiet was not working anymore. It was time for loud. The $50,000 from 2015 was a huge piece of the puzzle, but my dad had called it a one-time terrible mistake. I did not believe that. People who orchestrate a deception that elaborate do not just stop. I needed to know what was happening now. The old paper statements in the basement were not enough. I needed to see the current accounts. The next time I saw my dad, I was direct. We met for a walk in a park, away from any prying ears. "Dad," I said as we walked along the path, "I need to see the online banking records." He stopped walking and looked at me, his face etched with worry. "Chloe, what for? You know the worst of it. Let it be." "No," I said, standing my ground. "I know what happened in 2015. I do not believe for a second that it stopped. She has been complaining about money being tight for years. You work hard. You make a good living. Where is it all going? You need to know. I need to know." "I do not want to know," he said, his voice low. "Honestly, Chloe, I think it is easier not to know. I just pay the bills, put money in the account, and try not to think about it." His resignation infuriated me. It was the resignation of a man who had been beaten down for so long, he had accepted his fate. "That is not fair to you, Dad," I said, my voice rising. "She is not just spending your money. She is disrespecting you. She accused you in front of me of something she is guilty of. That is not okay. You cannot let her get away with it." "And what is the alternative?" He shot back, a flash of his old fire returning. "Blow up my life? Our family? Your mother and I have been married for 35 years. You think I can just throw that away?" "She is the one throwing it away," I insisted. "Not you. Dad, please. I am not going to do anything without talking to you first. But we are flying blind. We need to see the whole picture. Let me help you. You do not have to look. I will. Just give me the access." He stared at me, his jaw tight. I could see the war raging inside him, the desire to keep the peace versus the exhaustion of being a silent victim. He had protected me from this for my whole life. Now, I was asking him to let me walk into the fire with him. Finally, he let out a long, shuddering breath. "All right," he said, his shoulders slumping. "All right, Chloe, but be careful." That night, he texted me a username and a password. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt like a trespasser, an intruder into the most private parts of my parents' lives. But I knew it was necessary. I typed in the login information and hit enter. The bank's homepage loaded. My parents' names were at the top, David and Amelia. I clicked on their main checking account. The balance was much lower than I would have expected. I started scrolling through the recent transactions, and then I saw it. A recurring monthly transfer. It was scheduled for the first of every month. The description was simple, almost mocking in its innocence. Family support. The amount was $5,000, every single month, like clockwork. $5,000. That was $60,000 a year. I felt sick. I clicked on the transaction details. The destination account was in the name of Brenda Miller, my Aunt Brenda. This was not a little help. This was a salary. My dad was paying his sister-in-law a $60,000 a year salary to do nothing. The lie was so much more audacious than I had imagined, but it did not stop there. I noticed the checking account was linked to several credit cards. I clicked on my mother's card. My dad had his own, with minimal, predictable charges. Gas, hardware store, groceries. My mom's statement was a different universe. I opened the most recent one. The charges were dizzying. There were plane tickets to Florida. Not for my parents. The passenger names were Brenda Miller and her son, Liam. There was a charge from a luxury car dealership. It was not a charge for a whole car, but it was a large one. $5,000. The memo line read, down payment. There were charges from a website Detal's university tuition payment portal. Thousands of dollars. I knew my cousin Liam had just started college. A private college. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the mouse. I was not just looking at financial support, I was looking at a fully funded lifestyle. My Aunt Brenda and her family were living a life of luxury, all paid for by my father, funneled through my mother's secret credit card. A credit card I was certain my father did not even know existed. I scrolled back, month after month, year after year. It was a relentless, sickening pattern. Resort stays, expensive dinners, designer clothing. All of it hidden in plain sight on a credit card statement my dad had admitted he never looked at. He just paid the total balance, trusting her. The full weight of it crashed down on me. I thought about my own life. I had worked my way through college, taking out student loans that I was still paying off. I had been proud of my independence. But now I saw it in a new light. I had been independent because the money that could have helped me, the money that could have been my inheritance, was being siphoned off to pay for my cousin's private school and my aunt's vacations. The injustice of it was a physical pain. My dad had been working himself to the bone, not for his own retirement, not for his wife, not for his daughter, but for them, for her family. I started printing. I printed every bank statement for the past 3 years. I printed every credit card statement. The stack of paper grew on my desk, a monument to my mother's betrayal. The numbers were staggering. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars. Over the decades, it had to be over $1 million. This was not about generosity. This was a carefully orchestrated financial takeover. My mother's motive became crystal clear. It was not about need. It was about status. In her family, she was the queen. She was the wealthy, successful sister who could solve any problem with a wave of her husband's checkbook. She had built herself a throne of lies, and she had built it on my father's back. My sadness curdled into a cold, hard rage. My dad was not the only victim here. I was a victim too. My future had been sold off to fund their present. The plan started to form in my mind. Not a vague idea, but a clear, step-by-step strategy. This could not be a quiet conversation. It could not be another tearful promise to stop. The lies were too big. The deception was too deep. This had to be a public execution, a complete and total demolition of the false reality my mother had constructed. And I knew exactly when and where it had to happen. The evidence I had was overwhelming. The bank statements, the credit card bills, the sheer volume of money was damning. But it was all numbers. It showed what had happened, but it did not show why. It did not show the intent, the malice, the casual cruelty of it. I knew my mother. She would find a way to spin it. She would claim it was all a misunderstanding. She would say she was just a bad bookkeeper. She would cry and say she was only trying to help her family and she lost track of things. She would make herself the victim. I needed something more. I needed her own words. My mom had a tablet she was glued to. She spent hours on it every day, scrolling through Facebook, answering emails, playing games. It was her digital world. I knew her password. She used the name of her childhood pet. It was a silly, sentimental choice, and I had always found it endearing. Now it felt like a key, left carelessly in a lock. I felt a pang of guilt. Snooping through her private emails felt like a profound violation. But then I thought of my father, sitting alone in his dark study. I thought of the $50,000 she had stolen for the kitchen. I thought of my student loan statements. The guilt evaporated, replaced by cold necessity. She had violated our family in the most profound way. My looking through her emails was a necessary counter-violation. I waited for the right opportunity. A few days later, she called me. "Chloe, I am meeting my book club for lunch and then we are going shopping. I will be gone all afternoon." Her voice was carefree. She thought the storm had passed. This was my chance. I drove to their house using the spare key my dad had given me years ago. The house was silent. It felt strange to be there alone, like a burglar in my own home. I went into the living room. Her tablet was on the coffee table, right where she always left it. I picked it up. My hands were clammy. I typed in the password. Fluffy72. The screen unlocked. I opened her email client. The inbox was full of junk mail and newsletters. I went to the search bar. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed in Brenda. The results flooded the screen. Years and years of correspondence. Thousands of emails between my mother and her sister. I started reading the most recent ones and worked my way back. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. It was a running commentary on their deception. An email from Brenda from just 2 months ago. Can you ask David for the money for Liam's tuition? The next payment is due. My mother's reply, sent the same day. Do not worry, I have got it handled. I told him the car needed new brakes and a transmission flush. He just grunted and said, okay. The wallet is so wrapped up in his work, he never even checks. I will transfer it from the household account tomorrow. The wallet. They called my father the wallet. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. He was not a person to them. He was not her husband, not my father. He was an object, a thing to be used. I kept scrolling. I felt a morbid compulsion to see it all. Another email from last year. This one from my mother to Brenda. I am so tired of David's sister, Carol. She was asking questions again, always so nosy. She does not understand family loyalty, not like us. Another one from Brenda. Did you get the money for my trip to Cancun? Mom's reply. Of course. I just told David we had an unexpected property tax assessment. He complained for a minute, but he wrote the check. Honestly, it is getting easier and easier. He is too tired to argue anymore. They were bragging. They were congratulating each other on how successfully they were manipulating him. There was no shame, no guilt, only a smug sense of entitlement. Then I found an email that made my blood run cold. It was about me. It was from my mother to Brenda after I had graduated from college. Chloe called today, complaining about her student loans, my mom wrote. I just do not understand her generation. So selfish. She gets that from her father's side. No sense of family obligation. She should be helping us, not hoarding her money. She had called me selfish. She, who is funding her sister's entire life from my father's pocket, had the audacity to call me selfish for wanting to pay off my own debts. The hypocrisy was stunning. She had not just stolen from my future, she had resented me for trying to build it myself. But the final, devastating blow was an email chain from just last month. It was titled The Retirement Plan. Brenda had written, Amelia, have you thought about what happens when David finally retires? The income will drop. We need a plan. My mother's reply was long and detailed. It was a cold, calculated strategy. I have been working on him, she wrote. I have been talking about how big this house is just for the two of us, how much work it is to maintain. I am planting the seed. The plan is to convince him to sell and downsize to a small condo. We can use the profit from the sale to buy that lake house we have always talked about. It can be in your name for tax purposes, a place for the whole family to use. It will be our legacy. Their legacy, built innovazionico the rubble of my father's life. They were not just planning to continue bleeding him. They were planning a final, massive extraction. They were going to take us home. The primary asset he had spent his life paying for, and turn it into their family playground. This was the key. This was the undeniable proof of Jajik malicious intent. This was not about helping family in need. This was a hostile takeover. I did not just print 1 or 2 emails. I printed all of them. The email calling my dad the wallet. The email calling me selfish. And the entire nauseating chain of emails detailing the retirement plan. The stack of papers in my folder was now thick and heavy. It was a comprehensive indictment. I did not wait. I called my dad. Dad, I need to see you. Now, it is urgent. He must have heard the tone in my voice because he just said, Where? We met at my apartment. I sat him down at my kitchen table. I did not just tell him what I had found. I knew he would try to minimize it, to find peer excuse. I made him read it. First, I showed him the credit card statements. I had highlighted the plane tickets, the tuition payments, the car down payment. He stared at the pages, his face pale. "I did not know about this card," he whispered. "I know," I said softly. "There is more." Then I gave him the emails. I put the one where they called him the wallet on top. He read it. Then he read it again. The color drained from his face, replaced by a dark mottled red. The weary sadness I had seen in him for weeks was gone. In its place was a slow, burning rage. It was an anger I had never seen in him before. It was the anger of a man who had finally, truly understood the depth of the betrayal. He looked at the next email, the one where my mother called me selfish. His hand, holding the paper, started to tremble. Finally, I gave him the printout of the retirement plan. He read it in silence. When he was done, he placed the papers neatly back on the table. He was unnervingly calm. He looked up at me, and his eyes were clear and hard. The victim was gone. "What do we do?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but it had a core of steel I had not heard in years. I looked at him, my own resolve matching his. "We stop it," I said. "All of it. We end it. And we do it in a way that she can never, ever twist the story again." He nodded slowly. "How?" "Mom's 60th birthday is in 2 weeks," I said. "She is planning a big party. At the house. She told me she is inviting everyone. Aunt Brenda, Uncle Mark. All of them will be there." A flicker of understanding dawned in his eyes. "She will be the center of attention," I continued, laying out the plan. "She will be the gracious hostess, the beloved matriarch. Her whole family will be there to sing her praises. It is the perfect stage." My dad listened, his expression unreadable. He was processing the idea. A public confrontation went against every instinct he had. He was a private man who hated scenes, but he had seen the emails. He knew a private conversation would be useless. It would just lead to more lies, more tears, more empty promises. "We let her have her party," I said, my voice low and steady. "We let her have her moment. We let them all toast to her generosity. And then, when she is at the very height of her glory, we tell the truth. We show them the proof. We show them all who she really is." He was silent for a long time, staring at the stack of papers on my table. He picked up the email printout, the one with the word wallet on it, and read it one more time. He folded it guango and put it in his shirt pocket. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "We do it your way." The 2 weeks leading up to the party were the most surreal of my life. My mother was in a frenzy of planning. She called me every day with updates. The caterer, the flowers, the guest list. She was giddy with excitement. "Brenda and her family are so excited to come," she gushed on one call. "And Mark is going to give a toast. Isn't that sweet? My whole family all together. It is going to be the best birthday ever." Listening to her, knowing what I knew, made my stomach churn. I played my part. I was the dutiful daughter. I helped her pick out a tablecloth. I offered to make a dessert. I listened to her complain about the cost of it all, how they had to pinch pennies to afford the party. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. During this time, I saw a change in my dad. The weight on his shoulders seemed to have lifted. It was replaced by a quiet, focused determination. He was still quiet, but it was not a defeated silence anymore. It was a patient silence. The silence of a hunter waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He was polite to my mother, but distant. If she noticed the change, she was too absorbed in her party planning to comment on it. She just saw his compliance. The night of the party arrived. The house was transformed. There were flowers everywhere. Candles flickered on every surface. A long table was set up in the dining room, big enough for 20 people. The house was filled with the chatter and laughter of my mother's family. Aunt Brenda arrived, draped in a new coat I was sure my father had paid for. She hugged my mother tightly. Amelia, you look beautiful. The house is gorgeous. Uncle Mark showed up, smelling of expensive cologne. He shook my dad's hand. David, good to see you. Thanks for doing all this for her. My dad just nodded, his expression neutral. She deserves it, he said. The words were simple, but I heard the double meaning. I moved through the party, a ghost in my own home. I watched my mother, the queen bee, flitting from group to group, accepting compliments, her laughter ringing through the house. She was soaking in the adoration. This was her element. This was the world she had bought and paid for with my father's life. Dinner was served. The food was lavish, the wine flowed freely, the conversation was loud and cheerful. My dad sat at one end of the table, I sat at the other. My mom sat in the middle, in the seat of honor, beaming. After the main course, the toasts began. Uncle Mark stood up, raising his glass. I would like to propose a toast, he said, his voice booming. To my wonderful, incredible sister, Amelia. She has always been our rock, the most generous, supportive person I know. Whenever any of us have been in trouble, she has been there. We would be lost without her. To Amelia. To Amelia, everyone echoed. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, a perfect picture of humble gratitude. Then Aunt Brenda stood up. I just want to second that, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Amelia, you are more than a sister. You are a saint. Your heart is so big. You have given us so much. I do not know how we can ever repay you. You do not have to, my mom said, waving her hand. That is what family is for. She glanced down the table at my dad. Of course, I could not do any of it without my wonderful, hard-working husband. He is the one who makes it all possible. It was a throwaway line, a token acknowledgement. She smiled at him, a condescending, patronizing smile. This was it. This was the moment. I stood up, my own wine glass in my hand. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. I would like to make a toast too, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. My mother smiled at me, an encouraging, motherly smile. She thought I was going to join the chorus of praise. I would like to toast to generosity, I began, looking directly at my mom. You have always taught us the importance of taking care of family. It is truly inspiring. For example, the huge loan you and Dad gave to Uncle Mark back in 2015 to help him start his business. That was incredibly generous. The room was silent. Uncle Mark looked utterly bewildered. My mother's smile froze on her face. A flicker of panic appeared in her eyes. Chloe, she said, her voice a tight warning. This is a party. It is not the time to talk about business. You are right, I said, my voice remaining light and conversational. My mistake. It was not a business loan, was it? Because Uncle Mark has never had a business. That was just the story you told me. The real story is that it was $50,000 you told Dad was for the kitchen contractor, a contractor you never paid. You just took the money. Is that right? A collective gasp went through the room. My mother stared at me, her face white. That is a disgusting lie, she hissed. David, tell her. Tell her she is lying. Everyone turned to look at my father. He sat at the head of the table, silent, his expression unreadable. He did not say a word. His silence was her condemnation. Aunt Brenda stood up. How dare you talk to your mother like that? You are a vicious, ungrateful girl. I turned my gaze to her. Am I, Aunt Brenda? Or am I just the only one here willing to talk about the numbers? Like the $5,000 that is deposited into your bank account on the first of every month. Is that for your health problems? Or is it for your mortgage, your vacations, and your son's private school tuition? My dad's money is paying for your entire life. Is not it? Brenda sputtered, speechless. Her face was bright red. I have seen the credit card bills, Mom. I continued, my voice getting colder, harder. The secret card Dad did not even know about. I have seen the plane tickets, the car down payments, all of it. You went through my things? My mother shrieked, her voice cracking. She was finally realizing this was not something she could control. Yes, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but it carried in the stunned silence. I did. And I also read your emails, the ones between you and Brenda. I looked from my mom to my aunt. Their faces were masks of pure horror. The emails where you talk about how easy it is to lie to Dad, I said. The ones where you affectionately refer to him as the wallet. My dad flinched, a small, almost imperceptible movement. But I saw it. The emails where you call me selfish for wanting to pay my own student loans? I said, my voice shaking with a sudden surge of emotion. And my personal favorite, the emails where you lay out your retirement plan. Your plan to convince Dad to sell this house, his house, so you and your family can have a lake house, a legacy built on his back. No one was speaking. No one was moving. The air was thick with shock and shame. I reached down beside my chair and picked up the thick folder I had placed there. I walked to the center of the table and placed it down with a heavy thud. It is all in here, I said, my voice clear and loud. Every bank statement, every credit card bill, every email, the proof of every single lie. Happy 60th birthday, Mom. I turned and looked at my mother. Her face had crumbled. The mask of the gracious matriarch was gone, replaced by the raw, ugly face of a cornered thief. She looked at my dad, her eyes wide with a desperate final appeal. This was his moment. He had been silent for 30 years. He stood up slowly. He did not look at my mother. He looked at her family, at Brenda, at Mark. His voice was quiet, but it filled the entire house. Get out, he said. All of you, get out of my house. Now. There was a scramble, a chaotic scraping of chairs, a flurry of whispers and confused apologies. Uncle Mark and Aunt Brenda, their faces pale with shock and humiliation, practically ran for the door, their spouses and children trailing behind them. They did not look at my mother. They did not say a word to her. The family she had bought and paid for abandoned her in an instant. In less than 5 minutes, the house was empty. It was just the three of us. Me, my dad, and my mom, left sitting amidst the ruins of her party. The flowers, the candles, the half-eaten cake. It all looked like a funeral. My mother finally broke the silence. It was not with an apology. It was with an attack. You have ruined everything, she screamed at me, her voice a raw shriek. You have ruined this family. I did not flinch. I looked at her, at this woman I had loved and admired my whole life, and I felt nothing but a cold, empty pity. No, I said, my voice devoid of heat. You did. You ruined this family every time you lied, every time you stole, every time you called him the wallet. This is not a ruin. This is a reckoning. You just finally got caught. She turned to my dad, her face streaked with tears, the real tears of a manipulator who has run out of moves. David, please, she sobbed. Do not listen to her. We can fix this. I will pay it back. I promise. I will stop. I am so sorry. My dad looked at her. He looked at her for a long, long time. I could see him replaying 35 years of marriage in his mind. 35 years of lies. We will talk later, Amelia, he said, his voice flat and final. He turned and walked out of the room, not to his study this time, but towards the front door. He picked up his coat. Where are you going? She cried. I am going to a hotel, he said, not looking back. I need some time to think. Then he was gone. The front door clicked shut, leaving my mother sobbing alone at her ruined birthday table. I did not stay to comfort her. I walked past her, out of the dining room and out of the house. I did not look back. The days that followed were quiet and strange. My dad stayed at a hotel for a week. He called me every day. He sounded lighter. The exhaustion was gone from his voice. He told me he had met with a lawyer. I am not going to divorce her, he said, and I felt a pang of disappointment. Not yet, but I am initiating a legal separation. The lawyer is drawing up the papers. What does that mean? I asked. It means our finances are being legally separated, he explained. The joint accounts will be closed. She will no longer have access to my money. The house will be in my name only. The lawyer recommended I give her an allowance, a small one, to live on. I am not going to throw her out on the street. But the bank is closed. Permanently. It was not the divorce I thought he deserved to give her, but it was a start. It was control. He was finally taking back control of his own life. A few days later, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I answered it. "Chloe," a voice shrieked. It was Aunt Brenda. "What have you done?" "I told the truth," I said calmly. "The truth?" she screamed. "You have ruined us. Your mother is a mess. Your father has cut us off. The money has stopped. What are we supposed to do? How am I supposed to pay my mortgage? How is Liam supposed to stay in school?" The sheer, unadulterated entitlement in her voice was breathtaking. There was no shame, no apology, only rage that her free ride was over. "I do not know, Aunt Brenda," I said, and I allowed a small, cold smile to touch my lips. "I guess you will have to get jobs, like the rest of the world." I hung up before she could respond. I blocked her number. I then blocked Uncle Mark's number and the numbers of all my cousins. I was excising the rot. My dad moved back into the house, but he and my mom lived separate lives. He moved into the guest bedroom. He was methodical. He closed their old bank accounts and opened new ones in his name only. He canceled her secret credit card. He set up an automatic transfer of her new, small allowance into an account for her. It was just enough to cover her personal expenses and groceries. About a month after the party, my mom called me. Her voice was small, defeated. "Chloe, can we talk?" I agreed to meet her for coffee. She looked 10 years older. The fight was gone from her. She looked tired and frail. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. "Your father is selling the house," she said, her voice a whisper. I was surprised. "What? Why?" "He says he wants a fresh start," she said. "He wants to move into a smaller place. He said I can live there, but it will be his place, not ours." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I know I made mistakes, Chloe. I know I did terrible things. But I am your mother. Can you not talk to him? Convince him to give me another chance? To not do this?" She was still trying. After everything, she was still trying to use me to manipulate him. The flicker of pity I had felt died. "No, Mom," I said, my voice firm. "I will not. This is not my decision to make. This is between you and Dad. These are the consequences of your actions. For 30 years, you treated him like a wallet. Now, you get to live on an allowance. You built a family on his money. Now that the money is gone, you see what that family was really worth." She started to cry, but this time, the tears had no effect on me. They were just water. "Our relationship, if we are going to have one," I continued, "has to be different. It has to be based on truth. No more lies, no more manipulation. You have to be honest with me, and with yourself. Maybe, in time, we can build something new. But the old way is over. It is gone forever." I stood up, leaving her crying in the coffee shop. It was hard. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was necessary. My dad sold the house. He got a great price for it. He bought a beautiful, modern condo for himself with a great view. He gave my mom a room there, but it was clear it was his space. He started to live. He took up hobbies. He traveled. He went to Italy, a trip he had always wanted to take, a trip my mom had always said they could not afford. He sent me pictures of himself, smiling, standing in front of the Colosseum. He looked happy. Truly happy. A few months after the sale, he came to my apartment. He had a check in his hand. It was for a very large amount of money. "What is this?" I asked, stunned. That is your inheritance, he said, or part of it. The part your mother and her family did not manage to spend. I should have been saving it for you all along. Instead, I was letting her give it away. I am sorry, Chloe. Dad, you do not have to do this, I said, my eyes welling up. I want to, he said, pressing the check into my hand. I trust you with it. Do something smart. Pay off your loans. Invest it. Buy a place of your own. Just do not give it to anyone who has not earned it. I paid off my student loans the next day. The feeling of that weight lifting off my shoulders was indescribable. It was freedom. My relationship with my mother is strained. We talk, but it is different. It is superficial. The warmth is gone. She is living in the condo with my dad, but she is like a ghost in his new life. Her family, just as I predicted, rarely calls her. Now that the Bank of David was closed, they had no use for her. She had been Maddie Queen, but only because she held the key to the treasury. Without it, she was just Amelia. Sometimes when I see her, I see a flicker of the old entitlement in her eyes, a hint of resentment that her world is so much smaller now. But then it is gone, replaced by a weary resignation. She finally learned what it feels like to be the one who needs something, the one who has to ask for help. She finally learned what it feels like to be small. The silence she gets from her family now is the same kind of silence she always gave my dad. A silence that is not peaceful, but empty. And in that emptiness, I think she is finally, for the first time, hearing the truth.